Neglect in the aftermath. Critical examination of a woman's death in a powerless Houston condo post-Hurricane Beryl. The tragic death of a 69-year-old woman in her powerless Houston condo after Hurricane Beryl highlights a dire intersection of natural disaster aftermath, infrastructure failure, and societal neglect. Found dead on July 16, her story underscores the urgent need for better disaster preparedness, quicker response times, and more compassionate community care. The Houston Fire Department reported the discovery of the woman at 5353 Institute Lane around 11:30 a.m. on July 16. Despite the extensive media coverage, her identity remains undisclosed, adding a layer of anonymity that often cloaks the most vulnerable victims in society. The medical examiner has yet to determine the cause of death, but the circumstances surrounding her demise point to a broader systemic failure. Hurricane Beryl left a significant swath of Houston without power, impacting over 35,000 Centerpoint customers as of July 17. This extensive outage, which lasted over a week in some areas, exposed residents to extreme summer heat without the respite of air conditioning or refrigeration. The victim, who had pre-existing health issues, decided to ride out the outage in her condo. This decision, while seemingly personal, reflects a lack of viable alternatives and support systems for vulnerable individuals during disaster scenarios. Neighbor Pat Baker, whose daughter was renting the unit to the victim, discovered the body. Baker's account: "I came to check on her and she didn't answer. I unlocked the door and found her," poignantly captures the isolation and helplessness the victim must have felt. The sadness expressed by another neighbor about the woman's suffering in the heat further underscores the communal grief and guilt that often accompanies such preventable tragedies. Centerpoint electric crews restored power later that afternoon, but their delayed response raises critical questions about the efficiency and priority of utility companies during emergencies. While Centerpoint issued a statement expressing condolences and gratitude towards their crews, these sentiments do little to address the immediate failures that contributed to the victim's death. This incident is not an isolated event, but part of a troubling pattern that emerges post-disasters, where the most vulnerable suffer disproportionately. The fact that over 24 people in southwest Texas died as a result of Hurricane Beryl, as reported by ABC affiliate KTRK, highlights a systemic issue in disaster response and infrastructure resilience. Firstly, the prolonged power outage in a major metropolitan area like Houston reflects poorly on the preparedness and responsiveness of utility companies and municipal authorities. While natural disasters are unpredictable, the infrastructure and emergency response systems should be robust enough to minimize their impact on human life. The delay in restoring power, especially to areas housing vulnerable populations, is a glaring oversight that demands scrutiny and reform. Secondly, the victim's decision to stay in her condo despite health issues points to a lack of adequate emergency shelters or community support systems. In a city like Houston, which is frequently in the path of hurricanes, there should be well-publicized and accessible options for residents to seek refuge during extended power outages. The absence of such options forces individuals to make perilous choices, often with fatal consequences. Moreover, the discovery of the victim by a concerned neighbor rather than a welfare check by authorities indicates a gap in community care and emergency protocols. During prolonged outages or extreme weather events, there should be systematic checks on vulnerable residents, such as the elderly or those with medical conditions. This proactive approach could prevent deaths and mitigate suffering. The death of a 69-year-old woman in her powerless Houston condo following Hurricane Beryl is a stark reminder of the severe consequences of infrastructure failure and inadequate disaster preparedness. This tragedy calls for a critical re-evaluation of how utility companies, municipal authorities, and communities respond to natural disasters. The systemic neglect that allows vulnerable individuals to slip through the cracks must be addressed through more robust emergency planning, quicker response times, and a stronger support network. Only through such reforms can we hope to prevent similar tragedies in the future and ensure that no one is left to suffer in isolation during times of crisis.